You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. I have a special affinity to YIVO. Yeah, this Institute for Jewish Research dedicated to the preservation and study of the history and culture of East European Jewry worldwide. My daughter, Penina Shlomit, has been affiliated with YIVO, and she got proposed to. Her chassan proposed at YIVO. So we're very pleased that Jonathan Brent, Executive Director, CEO of YIVO for the last 13 years, joins us. Jonathan, thank you for joining us on the air.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you.
Do we have to conduct the interview in Yiddish, or can we do it in English?
Let's try English.
Okay, fine. Now, YIVO has changed under your leadership. It's not the YIVO of your grandparents or of your parents. It's a different YIVO today, correct?
It is a different YIVO, but I like to think of it as the YIVO that they dreamed of. And by that, I mean, we are reaching the Jewish people descended from Eastern Europe, wherever they are all over the world today, through our programs, through our online museum. People from 130 different countries around the world tune in to our to watch, to see our exhibitions. And we're doing the important work of preserving the past, as well as developing plans for the future.
So it used to be YIVO, people thought of it as a place where you find old manuscripts, dusty books, but now you've transformed where you're now completely different. It's digital. You're getting a lot more younger people involved too. So it's not just the older folks that may have been from Eastern Europe, it's their descendants. It's a lot of young people involved. So what happened that now we're getting this whole change? How did it come about?
Well, I think it's come about gradually, but I'll tell you, when I started the Vilna Collections project that concluded with the announcement on Monday, this past Monday, the 7 year, $7 million project. When I dreamed this up, frankly, I was told flatly by many people, both at YIVO and outside of YIVO, we could never do it. A, we couldn't raise the money. B, we would not be able to find the archivists and the librarians to deal with these materials in Yiddish, in Polish, in Russian, in German, in Hungarian, and so many other different languages.
You forgot Romanian.
And Romanian, absolutely, in Romanian, and Lithuanian, and in Ukrainian, and God knows, and in handwritten 18th century Yiddish, and Fraktur German. This was an incredibly difficult project, and I was told you'll never find the people for it. So we started it nevertheless, because I thought we would be able to train young people. And I just made up my mind. I said, if there are not young people, like your daughter, for instance, whom I didn't know at the time, if there are not such young people, I think it's over. It's finished. Why bother any longer with the pretense that we have something to communicate to future generations that is of importance to them, that will ensure the continuation of the Jewish people? And so, to be honest, I wasn't that surprised when we found that there were many young people who came to us. Maybe they weren't already completely trained archivists. Maybe they didn't know Yiddish so thoroughly. Maybe they needed instruction. We gave them instruction. We taught them how to be archivists. In many cases, the non-Jewish young people from Lithuania who were excited about this project and were working on it in the Lithuanian National Library and elsewhere, who needed training in Yiddish, we we paid for them to come to New York for our summer program and learn Yiddish. And these young people, let me tell you, like your daughter, they're dynamos and they're dedicated and they're committed to this. And one young archivist I sent to Lithuania to look at some of the materials that had been discovered. And she came back and she said to me, when I touched one of those pieces of paper, I felt the thrill of touching the past, of being part of this history. And she said, I cannot tell you what that was like. And that is the power of these materials, and that is the power of YIVO, to help people touch those materials, get in touch with that history, and it is not dead. And so we found the archivists, we trained the archivists, but we also found the money. And what we found was that people would send in $5, they would send in $15, $50, $100 from all over the world. People were sending in money. And then, of course, we got a major leading gift of $1 million from an anonymous donor.
What's his name again?
Anonymous. And then another major 7-figure gift. And then Spielberg's foundation, Righteous Persons, and members of our board stepped up. And we found that this was a project that really galvanized the whole Jewish community around the world. And
so
indeed,
let's look at the Vilna Online Collection project, where it took 7 years, over $7 million were raised. I don't even think you believed you were going to raise that kind of money, but you did. So tell us about the project, what it did, what it accomplished.
well, YIVO had the largest collection of original materials pertaining to the history of the Jewish people of Eastern Europe, anywhere in the world. That it collected from 1925, when YIVO was founded, to 1940, when the war had started. YIVO is in the Soviet zone, so YIVO is protected from invasion until 1941. It had this library and this extraordinary archive with materials from literally all over the world, from Russia, from America, from South America, from the UK, from France, from Germany, Hungary, Romania, Ukraine, everywhere. And it was all there in the archive. The Nazis come in 1941, and they know, Alfred Rosenberg knows that this vast amount of material is here, and he wants a lot of it, not all of it. A lot of it they're going to destroy, but a lot of it he wants for his Frankfurt Institute for the Study of the Jewish Question.
Was that the same thing at the Museum for the Extinct Jewish Race?
No, that was going to be in Prague. In Prague, there was going to be the museum, and in Frankfurt, there was established the Institut zur Erforschung der Judenfrage, the Institute for the Study of the Jewish Question. And so, but the Nazis couldn't read Yiddish. They could barely read Polish. If they could at all, they didn't know Russian. And so they had to enlist slave laborers from the Jewish community who had worked at YIVO from the ghetto. And so among them were Avram Sutzkever and Shmerke Kaczyginski and about 30 others. And they sorted all of the materials, they put them in boxes, and they sent them to Frankfurt. However, they also decided that they didn't want to give everything to the Nazis. And so secretly, on their bodies, in their shoes, under their arms, however they could do it, they hid materials, and they carried them out of the YIVO building, and they brought them into the ghetto and buried them, hid them in bunkers, or gave them to non-Jewish friends on the outside. The materials that went to Frankfurt were discovered by the US Army in 1945. They were sorted, and then I believe in 1947 they were shipped to New York. But the material that was hidden in the ghetto was uncovered when Sutzkever and Kaczynski returned from being partisans. They had escaped the ghetto and became Soviet partisans. And after the war, they immediately returned. They started digging everything up. And they found a great deal of it. They started a new Jewish museum in Vilnius. And then the Soviets came, and in 1948, the Soviets wanted to liquidate everything altogether. Sutzkever and Kaczynski had to flee, and it was going to be pulped. Everything was going to be pulped by the Soviets, but a Lithuanian librarian, Antanas Ulpis, the head of the Lithuanian book chamber at the time, hid all of the material in the Church of St. George, and there it stayed, unknown.
And he was able to get all the material that they smuggled out?
Yeah, from 1948 to 1989. Ulpis died. He knew nothing of what happened to this. But in 1989, as the Soviet Union is collapsing, the Lithuanians discover some of it. And then in 1991, when the Soviet Union is kaput, the rest is discovered. A big announcement is made. And lo and behold, we now discover that the Vilna collections is split. It's divided between America and Lithuania. And there it was. And nobody, frankly, was using it. Scholars weren't going to see it. Very few people traveled to Lithuania to look at these materials. I know because when I went and looked in the logbook of visitors, I saw only 2 names in all those years. And so at that point, I decided, instead of arguing endlessly with the Lithuanians as to who owns this and where it should be and keeping it tied up in court for another 100 years, let's do something that would save the material and benefit Jews and non-Jews alike, which is to digitize it, unite digitally the 2 sides of the collection, and make it online for free to the entire world.
Jonathan Brent is our guest, Exec Director, CEO for the last 13 years of the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. Jonathan, so this is a big project. You were able to unite to digitize it, and I guess they had no objections to that because you're right, there are fights over the actual materials itself. So this is one big project that YIVO has done, and congratulations, and they got it accomplished.
Thank you.
I know that you don't sit resting on your laurels, so what's your next project?
Our next project is to
Got to be
continue.
bigger than this, right?
Well, you see, this project not only was a project, but it really galvanized the whole institution and brought us to another level. We are not the same institution that we were 7 years ago. We have a digital lab. We have all of these young, enthusiastic archivists. We have procedures in place to handle such projects as this. We had to learn all of that over that 7-year period, but we have learned it. And now we feel that we can take on even bigger projects. And so the next project is the digitization of the entire archive and library of the Bund. That is at YIVO.
I'm sorry, which one? The digital, which archives?
Of the Bund, the labor Bund.
The left-wing Bund, okay. Now, where those archives? Their archives are based?
The main archive is in New York, in the YIVO Institute. There is a section of it in Moscow. There is a section of it in Amsterdam. There's a bit of it in Australia. And I believe also some in Switzerland. And so, depending upon the world situation, we will try to unite all of these different elements of the project and put them all under one virtual cover. But it's huge. It's much bigger than the Vilna collections. And Vilna collections was 1.5 million documents. The Bund is 3.5 million documents. And therefore, we're going to have to raise, again, a great deal of money. And we're going to have a very efficient, well-organized staff. But I have total confidence that we can do this. Our board has total confidence that we can do this. And we will begin the process of surveying material and conserving the material early this year.
So how does it work? Because I would assume that finding research money for to digitize the Bund archive might be maybe harder to achieve than, let's say, the Vilna, which is more broad based. The Bund is more specific, more to a group that's let's say on the left wing of the spectrum. You think that's going to make any difference as far as raising funds?
Well, it might. We don't know, but I believe that any one of the foundations that we approached for the Vilna Collections Project will have an interest in this, not because of its political affiliation, but because the Bund is such a vital part of the Jewish history of Eastern Europe. Left, right, center, whatever it is at the core of the Jewish experience in Eastern Europe in the 1900s, 20s, 30s, and up to the war.
Now, Jonathan, what else is there out there that needs to be digitized?
Well, there are any number of things. The most important other project that I can think of right at the moment is to digitize the archive of the Onski ethnographic expedition. And this archive is in St. Petersburg, Russia. It is in Kiev, Ukraine, and it is in New York at YIVO. Again, split, but exactly the way the Jewish world got split up into little fragments and pieces went all over the place. But the materials at YIVO are in sound condition, pretty much. But if you come to YIVO, you see these, but you don't see what's in Kiev. And in Kiev, you don't see what's in St. Petersburg. And unfortunately, relations between Russia and Ukraine are hardly cordial right at the moment, or with the United States. So this is something that needs, that will have to wait for a while.
And the digitization has to be done actually in that country. So if the materials are in Ukraine, you have to send people to the Ukraine or Russia or wherever it might be.
Or find people in Ukraine who can do this work. And the urgency for this, I cannot stress enough. And I'm glad I have an opportunity to talk about it on your program, because this is something the entire Jewish world should be concerned about. Let me tell you why. When I was in Kiev and I was shown the Onski Archive, I saw...
Maybe just tell me who Onski was, so people should...
Onski, he is the author of the Dybbuk. He was
Yes, Yiddish movie made in Poland in 1939, right?
Well, yes, and it was turned into... it was performed in 1916. It was finished in 1916 and performed in 1920. There have been numerous movies and operettas and poems and novels written about this. It's one of the landmark works of Jewish literature of Eastern Europe. And in any case, he was a revolutionary. And he had pretty much abandoned his Jewishness for a long time, and then he came back to it. And when he came back to it, he realized that he had made a mistake, and that it was necessary to preserve this precious legacy of his heritage from Eastern Europe. And so he organized what was called the Onski Ethnographic Expedition from 1912 to 1914. It ended because of World War I. And at that time, he went throughout the Pale of Settlement and he interviewed people. He had them sing songs. He had them write down stories. He found out about magical amulets. All the Bubby Meinses, the jokes. He had someone sketching scenes of shtetl life. He brought back artifacts. It's an extraordinary project, and there have been piecemeal exhibitions of it over a period of the last 25 years, but there has never been a full-scale exhibition, and it has never been reunited. And what I was about to say was that when I was in Kiev and I was looking at parts of it, and it just broke my heart because the paper is getting brown and you can barely see the handwriting. And in 20 more years, I'm telling you, Zev, you're not going to be able to see anything at all.
Wow. So
And
this has to be preserved now.
It has to be preserved now. Why do we have Jewish billionaires pumping money into buildings, into all kinds of things, and not preserving our heritage, not preserving our past?
Well, you pulled $7.1 million for the YIVO collection. So the other collections, like the Bund, will probably cost more because there's more materials, and this will probably cost. So you think,
Yes.
Are you confident you're going to be able to raise the geld?
I have to fall on my knees in front of our community and say, this is something you have to do if we as a people want to survive as a people.
So what you're saying, John, is Geb Geld Yidden, right?
Exactly.
A Yidden Geb Geld. Absolutely. Can people find all the stuff for free online?
They will. The Vilna Collections is all online for free today.
Where do they go? What's
They
the web?
go to the YIVO website, yivo.org, and there they will immediately be led to the website, and they will be able to navigate it. And if they have any problems, we have archivists standing ready to help them. And the same will be true with the Onski collection that I hope we will be able to digitize, and also the Bund. The Bund, do I have a moment still?
Sure, go right ahead, yes.
The Bund archive also, by the way, contains very, very, very important information about the beginning of the Bolshevik Party, because in the early years, the Bund was associated with all of the revolutionary movements in Russia, and Lenin and Stalin were highly aware of what the Bund was. There were meetings, there were conversations, and all of this is in the archive. So it's a priceless historical repository and historical gift.
Jonathan, thank you for the work that you've been doing. He's celebrating his bar mitzvah at the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. He's Exec Director and CEO, and we've been looking at YIVO and their new projects, including the Vilna Collection and some of the other projects. This is not the YIVO of your grandparents. It's a different YIVO. Thank you for joining us, being part of our show.
Thank you so much, Zev.
Thanks for listening.
Continuous Jewish programs, Talkline-Network.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the Talkline-Network.com.